Honey, what are you thinking about?
Where I'd like to go after this quarantine's over.
Where would you like to go?
Dreamland.
Dreamland, huh? What's Dreamland?
Hollywood is a brand new miniseries that's on Netflix right now that we got to enjoy during this little quiet time at home.
Yeah, I was very excited to watch this after watching the trailer.
Oh God, yes. So Hollywood begins in post-World War II, but not quite 1950s Hollywood. Big whoop. And we meet our ensemble of characters, including Jack Castillo, an Army veteran who's come into Hollywood to pursue his dream of becoming a big actor. We also have Raymond Ainsley, who is played by Darren Criss, who's from Glee, which is kind of fun to see. And he plays a half Filipino, half white director. And he is also in a relationship with a black woman, which at the time was actually illegal.
Yeah.
So they're kind of breaking the rules already there.
Yeah.
But that is Camille.
Yes.
And she is an actress who, unfortunately, like many black women at the time, or just black actors in general, are reduced to wait staff on the screen or the comedic relief, and they never really get a juicy actual role to do. So she's having it kind of rough. She's in Hollywood, but it's below her capabilities and her abilities as an actress. And then also we have two other young characters. Well, actually three characters that we have. We have Archie, who has it really rough in Hollywood because he's a writer, which is good, but he's got two things against him. He is black and he is a homosexual.
What?
Yeah. And Hollywood didn't like either. Basically, he was screwed either way. Yeah. And he's in a relationship with an actor, and who, through the course of the series, becomes Rock Hudson. Yeah. And Rock Hudson is famous for movies, especially in the 1950s, of being a romantic lead, especially with Doris Day in Pillow Talk, which is actually a really good film. Yeah. But so those are like our main characters, and also they have another character named Claire, who is the daughter of the studio head, who's also aspiring to be an actress. And those are our main cast that we follow throughout the series and the making of this film that in reality wouldn't have been made at all. Again,
this is a fantasy.
Yes, so it's very much a fantasy.
Yes.
The series follows these characters and their struggles on making this film actually happen. So for both of us, we both love old Hollywood. We both love, that time period. And so to see this show kind of showing that nitty-grittiness, but it seemed like to be the nitty-grittiness, we were both charged up to see this.
Yeah, it looked like it was going to be like LA Confidential meets
like Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah, just all those combined in one show, and I was like, oh yes, this is what I've been waiting for. I mean, there's so many period shows that we've seen of like the 50s and the 60s, but to see one of the 40s in Hollywood,
I haven't really seen that before. Some of the things that at least I really appreciated was seeing things that I've seen in movies and I've seen in real life. So growing up in Los Angeles area, I did get to experience a lot of these sites and have a nostalgia and history of them. And so to be watching this show that takes place obviously in Hollywood and Los Angeles, to see these places that I hold dear was really cool. Yeah. So while I know on this show it's supposed to be A Studios, I know from history and from being a nerd that they're filming right at Paramount Studios, a very famous gate that Gloria Swanson has driven through. And so I get those little bubbles of excitement going, oh, I know where that is. Yeah, yeah. And it's just, for me, it showed me the parts of the Hollywood and Los Angeles I wish I could have been at. Yeah, yeah. Because that's one of the pains of our life, is we can never go back to the time period that we really truly love and see it in its glory. Really got a kick out of that. So yeah, there was Paramount, there was Musso and Frank's, right. There was, although we've never got to go to it because it was closed well before we were born, Schwab's drugstore, which is a very famous Los Angeles drugstore that people were discovered as talent in, and it was a mecca for the creatives and the directors, producers. It was a place that you went. And so to see that there, it really just, it touched my heart to see the little tidbits of my beloved Hollywood. We started watching the series and we got through about 3 episodes, and to kind of tell the truth, we were struggling on finishing it.
Yeah, there was a moment I was like, is it worth finishing? But
and we persevered.
We persevered.
And so we were like, okay, there's stuff kind of going on, but we aren't really caring. We're just it's kind of pretty to look at.
Yeah.
But then it was like the 4th episode happened, and finally things were, for us, getting interesting.
Yeah, it started picking up, and there was definitely the conflict that I was hoping for
was really kicking in.
Yeah. I mean, there was a moment where it was like they had gangsters in it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, cool. This is what I've been, waiting for.
Yeah, that the dark underbelly of Hollywood and how other forces outside kind of reigned over Hollywood. So you think it's just the producers? No, the mafia, gangsters were involved in the making of movies and in the studio system.
Yeah.
And that's when we finally see the conflict of the reactions with the races and homosexual, homophobia. And so we got to see finally the struggles that are real, that truly happened to anybody, of color or of a different gender orientation. We finally get to see a little drop of what they were going through, or still been going through at times too. It's just, we finally see there's a struggle that they truly have to overcome. But the only sad part about it was that it was just that 1 episode.
Yeah, if they really had that going from the get-go, that just would have been like, oh yes, this is the show I've been wanting.
Yeah, just to show, that this is a fantasy, but show them truly climbing to the top and overcoming every stupid obstacle that's been put in their way because of who they are.
Yeah.
And it's just the show. A lot of we've seen a lot of mixed emotions with our own friends and everything like that. And some people are like, I hated it. Some people are like, I'm bawling, I'm watching it again. And while I got emotional at the end, seeing the characters, getting the Academy Awards or the recognition that they deserve, it wasn't the character I was cheering for. It was more a sad longing for that to have been true. Maybe that's what they were going for in the series.
Yeah.
But I just felt sad that I wasn't like, you go, it was more like, I wish.
They did enough to really make us root for these characters. I'm not saying they were totally dislikable.
No.
But they just, I don't know, they just weren't fleshed out enough for me to be like, oh yeah, I relate to this character.
Yeah, they weren't relatable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to make regular people relate to Hollywood actors anyways, because our lives are very different than theirs.
Yeah.
In every way, shape, and form. So you're already at a disadvantage at that point. But we didn't see enough of their human flaws to really, to relate to them, to go like, I've been in your shoes, man.
Yeah.
It just...
It's the empathy. We didn't have the empathy.
No, but you feel this, you do feel this sadness that you wish that this had been actual history.
Yeah.
You wish that, that people didn't have to struggle so hard to be who they want to be, both in their careers and in their personal lives. You truly wish that wasn't a fantasy, but that was the only thing that tugged at my heart was those little bits of struggles. But I truly wish that they had just pushed it a little bit more. So we saw, they climbed the Hollywood edge, but we should have seen them claw their way.
There just wasn't enough struggle in this show.
Well, even one of our main protagonists, Jack Castillo, first episode and such, there's a conflict of him working at the gas station, and he doesn't want to do any of the homosexual stuff. And you know what? Rather than be like, well, we don't need you, we'll get somebody who actually does. They're like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just get a new guy to do this, and it's like, what? Not that I would necessarily want him to have to do those things, but it was just so nonchalant that they were just like, well,
Yeah.
Well, finding someone who does.
But that seems to be, again, every episode there was a conflict, and then it was just, oh, okay, well, solved. Oh, for example, when Claire, just sort of easily just throws away the audition. It was just like an easy way to just, I don't know, give it to
we didn't know
Camille.
her motive, because you were introduced to this character, and she's kind of has this already diva, whiny, entitled attitude, and then we don't know what happens, why she throws her audition, and then all of a sudden she's this change of heart, and we're supposed to be kind of rooting for her.
Yeah.
Kind of, I guess.
We still don't really root for her, for Claire.
No, not.
Yeah.
I mean, we barely see her.
She's not likable from the start. We're all like, oh.
Yeah, just everything about her just was not warm, approachable.
It's not the actress's fault.
No.
It's just the writing of the character. It's just,
she was very even.
Yeah. And her conflict, was, she wanted to be in this movie.
And she got it.
She could have had it.
Well, she could have had the main part.
She could have had the main part, but
for some magical reason that wasn't really given, she just lets the other girl have it, and then all of a sudden they're besties.
Yeah. It just, everything just was too easy for people in this show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if this would have been better if they made this into a longer series, or just a movie and just kind of cut down.
I think a longer series would have helped, and
it's development, and
giving us, the audience, more time with these characters.
My theory is that Netflix was like, hey, you can only do up to 7 episodes, and you probably had way more material.
Yeah. It's like they took his outline for a story and said, well, we can't give you the whole script, the whole deep story that you want, so just do the outline. Just give us a summary.
And just sort of it's like everything was just sort of fast forward. Yes. And it just, I don't know, it could have been so much better if it was the entire series.
It kind of reminds me of the telegram in Three Amigos, that they have this long, eloquent thing telling them about El Guapo, and then because they can't afford it, they cross it all out, and then it's a completely different, message that's being sent. And so I wonder if there was a much more elaborate script, or a much more deeper, more episodes. Was like, no, you can't, because it feels like it wasn't complete, or at least in our minds, it wasn't complete.
It felt very rushed.
Yeah.
Like everything was just, it's like they rushed into, again, like they had the conflicts that were there, and then they kind of said, oh, forget it. Let's move on to the next thing.
We can't spend more time on the conflicts. We have to get to them making this movie. We have to get to them at the Oscars.
But even then, we never really got to see the making of the movie.
No, we did.
Which is what I was excited about. Hollywood, you want to see the making of movies. You want to see the conflict of making a movie.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of conflict of with the Hollywood, the H sign.
Yeah.
And that, but then that was resolved. Pretty.
Within one episode, it was
resolved.
One
episode. They did it all in one episode. They really just
it felt rushed. And what conflicts that you thought were going to happen didn't happen at all. So we have our two acting leads going to compete for the main role of the boyfriend.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really invested in the characters, so I wasn't like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? I'm like, okay, though, they're gonna set it up, they're gonna find out you're auditioning for it. Well, they both go towards the writer Archie, and it's like, hey, I thought we had a friendship. I thought we were in a relationship, so I thought there's gonna be more conflict with that.
No,
they're just fine,
and they're all best buddies.
I know that they make Rock Hudson he's a begrudged. He doesn't want to be an actor for some reason, but he's there.
Yeah.
I didn't get the feeling that he had the passion that Jack Castillo did.
Jack definitely had the passion.
Oh yeah, and you could see he's there every day, but Rock Hudson just seemed to be bumbling through.
Yeah.
I know that he wasn't the best of actors, but to dumb him down to this level, I felt it was a disservice to the real Rock Hudson. So while he's not a lead character, one of the fascinating characters in this show is the head of the gas station.
Ernie, yes.
Yes, and he's got this little debonair, Errol Flynn-esque mustache, and he's got this little slick back hair.
Yeah. Almost gangster-esque.
Yeah, just clean, suave gangster-esque. He's the one in the suit, not the one going to do the dirty work necessarily.
Fast talking.
Yeah, very a used car salesman kind of thing.
Exactly.
And he was great.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he didn't get enough screen time.
Yeah.
That we wanted. He was much more fascinating than some of the main characters. And he was just, he was
hard. I mean, he was in it for the first episode. He's introduced, and then I don't remember him being.
He was
in the
in,
other two.
He was in the second one because he was expressing he had a secret ambition to be in Hollywood as well.
Yeah.
You know, everyone comes to Hollywood with the dream of being in the movies, some one way or another. And so you kind of see like, oh, you know, he's almost offered a role and he's gonna take it.
Yeah,
you know,
he's almost there, but I get it.
But honestly, like we've kind of discussed that it would have been a much more fascinating show, at least in our opinion, to have multiple seasons and have first season young Ernie and his struggle of trying to get into Hollywood, coming across this gas station and making it into what he does of kind of like a, I don't want to call it a brothel, but it's like kind of like a brothel prostitute area. And this is based off of a real person.
Yeah.
You know, and this is a real event, and so that is interesting story. I mean, how do you go from, you know, gas station worker to having these men come up and you know, they're soliciting sex.
Yeah.
You know, how do you make that? And that would have been
a great series.
It would have been amazing.
I mean, imagine a whole season about that and just like all the different characters involved.
And the conflicts he would face, you know, how do you not get caught by the cops, and how do you get the men to work at your station? Yeah. Because in the first one, it's like, oh, you just make money. Yeah. He's like, okay.
I wasn't sure about him at first, and then he got more likable as the show progressed.
Yeah, you didn't know whether he was going to be a jerk or if he was truly like a good guy with a good heart. And thankfully, he does go good guy with a good heart route. And rather than shunning our characters or bashing them for kind of like dropping off, you know, on the whole gas station thing, when they need help, he is right there next to them. He supports them, and he's fulfilling their dreams, and they in turn help him. And so he does have actually he has a very sweet arc. You know, he's kind of like this cool guy when we first meet him, and then at the very, very end, you see he has a heart. He longs for not just the fame and glory of Hollywood, but he desires something deeper and more. And so that was a very nice arc for him. Yeah, I actually really liked that.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite characters in the show.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I was ashamed. I wanted to see more of his character. And more of his arc and story about the gas station.
If they could do a spin-off about Ernie,
oh, yeah.
We'd watch that.
I'm there. They should, jump at just Ernie.
Yes. And, that brings me to one of my complaints. One of my big complaints about the show Hollywood is the title.
Yes,
of
Hollywood.
All things.
You would think. Hollywood. It's going to be about Hollywood, which it is.
In a sense, because it takes place, you know, in the city of Hollywood and people's dreams and desires of being actors and actresses. However, if you're going to mix history and fantasy together with the main word, the code word being Dreamland, I think to not disappoint the audience, the title should have been Dreamland.
Yes.
And I mean, that's like the last line of dialogue too.
Yeah.
Is take me to Dreamland. And so I kind of wish that the name had been Dreamland to kind of set me up going, okay, this is a fantasy. We're going to be seeing things that truly didn't happen. I mean, I wasn't expecting everything to be historically accurate, but I just didn't realize what liberties were going to be taken in these ways.
Yeah.
And we can get into a whole conversation about Quentin Tarantino.
Yes, with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Glorious Bastards. Those are, you know, people are like, well, what about Tarantino? You know, the people complain about him. He took history that 99% of at least America knows. With Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you say Manson family, everyone knows Sharon Tate, terrible deaths. Yeah. And so people already have that backstory in their heads. Even if they don't have every minute detail, they've got the main details on those stories. And the problem with Hollywood for me was that they took liberties with stories that people don't know. And so people who don't research the history, who don't afterwards go, oh, let me look up into this, you know, they're going to take this almost as the, you know, gospel truth. Or they twisted things and you're like, oh, that's not quite how this was or worked. And so there's the fantasy aspect, but then there's the taking history and changing it and not letting your audience know which parts you were changing.
Yeah.
So it's part of the beauty of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We're going to go into Once Upon a Time in Hollywood review right now. But was that you know the buildup because you see Sharon Tate, you see the Manson family, and you know those worlds are going to collide and it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
But then the twist is on our own expectations because everyone knows the history. And then when Tarantino takes you on a different route, you go, oh my God,
yeah,
this is different. Oh, I don't know what's going to happen. And with Hollywood, I mean, we kind of guessed what's going to happen. It's going to be happily ever afters, but they didn't take history that everyone so deeply knows instinctually and change it so that we were kind of blown away by the ending.
Yeah.
It was predictable that they were going to win the Oscars. I mean, and it didn't change history enough to make you go, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, that's incredible. I loved what they did with that. And it just didn't do it.
I mean, people will, I'm sure some people might watch and go, okay, I want to Google it and see what the real history was.
Yeah, like Anna May Wong. Nobody pretty much knew who she was until this show. And hopefully people are doing the research about her and her career.
Yeah.
Or Hattie,
Played by Queen Latifah?
Yes.
Yes.
So Henry Wilson is based off of a real person in real life, his character. And he was played by Jim Parsons, who is famous from the
Big Bang Theory.
Yes, and I've actually never seen the Big Bang Theory.
Neither have I.
But during the show, I kept on forgetting his character's name, so I just kept on calling him Bazinga.
Yeah.
Which is a line from the show, as far as I know.
That is a Sheldon.
Yeah. So he was a character that was fascinating because when we meet him, he is a jerk.
Yeah, right off the bat, you're like, oh, he's just your typical Hollywood agent.
Who abuses his clients and everything like that and makes them do things that they don't want to do. But he wasn't hateable. Like, I didn't like his character because of what he was making people do, but there wasn't a desire to be rid of him.
Yeah.
And that's part of the conflict, is that there wasn't a conflict enough saying, we need to remove this guy. He's going to ruin everything.
Yeah.
And there is a moment that you worry that he's going to ruin people's dreams. But once again, easily resolved. So one of the strong points for me was actually the older characters in this series. We have Avis, who is the wife of the head of the studio. We have Dick Samuels, who's a producer, who's secretly gay, which we kind of find out too soon that he's gay.
Yeah.
And then Ellen Kincaid, and she was actually my favorite character.
Yeah.
And they are part of the older cast that has deeper backgrounds without giving, they don't tell you too much, but just how well their characters are written, their interactions, their dialogue, conversations between each other. You really get a deep sense of their characters, much stronger than I think, than our main ensemble.
Yeah.
And those were the stories I would have loved to have seen more of.
That would have been, Ernie and them, that would have been a great, just have that.
Yeah.
As the show. I mean, no offense to the younger cast.
Well, they were great actors.
Yeah, and
but it's just their stories weren't
as interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of a shame, but
it was great though, because you see these older people who were there at the beginning of Hollywood. So the silence, and they, with being the head of the studio, so they built that studio from nothing. And each of these people, they've been working together for at least 20 years. And so they have deep, rich history with each other in this beginning world of cinema. And so they have this knowledge, this background, they're the characters that I would love to have, heard more of their stories about starting out in the olden days. And, when did Kincaid really want to get into film? And when did Samuels, realize he wanted to be a producer? And it's just, those were stories that I really wish that we could have gotten more of, because they are the true stories of Hollywood that I love hearing about. And these people who start with nothing, or start from the very bottom, start at the very beginning, and then they are there in the successes, and they were just beautiful. And yet Kincaid, absolutely my favorite character in this show. She was witty. She really looked the part. She looked 1940s. Her hair was done beautifully.
Yeah.
Her clothes were styled pretty well. And she had this wit about her, this confidence, and a very realistic character. So she has this part that she kind of thinks she has feelings for a particular person, and then when her feelings are kind of rejected, politely, but rejected, she handles them super well, and she's just a very mature, wonderful character. And then she has her sweet happy ending at the end, and I was cheering for her on that one, because she was just the most in-depth, the most fascinating character in that whole series for me. And she's who I wanted to be, you know, in Hollywood. I didn't want to be in front of the screen like the young ingenues. I wanted to be behind the scenes. I wanted to be the ones working on that creative story, the ones putting together the movie for the other people to enjoy later on. And yeah, I adored her. Yeah. And Dick Samuels, he has a really sweet heart in this movie. I mean, he's firm when he needs to be. Yeah. But for the most part, he is a very sweet, likable character. And I mean, he's unfortunately one of the ones that pushes the conflicts, you know, through pretty quickly.
But he has conflicts within himself.
Oh, yes.
Which is good. And then he does have a nice arc. Yes. But again, he's pushing with all the other conflicts that we want in the story. So, Dick, you know.
But he was very sweet. And then Avis, honestly, the older characters had the most conflict that they were facing. Yeah. Because Avis is the wife of the studio head.
Played by Rob Reiner.
Which is hilarious to see. And, you know, so she's a woman in, you know, a position of power, kind of. She's Jewish, which still at the time, despite being in America and after World War II, there's still stereotypes, and there's still things that they have to, you know, deal with at the time. Right. And so she's got some negative things going towards her, and she's the wife who's going to listen to the wife. And so they have the biggest conflicts to go through. And so now she's in charge of the studio, and if she messes up, everyone's going to be looking at her because she's a woman, because she's Jewish, because, oh, she's just the wife. You know, she married into this. She doesn't have the talent. And so they have the most delightful storylines in this show. And those are the ones, so when the regular young people were taking a back seat in the stories, I was much more entertained and engrossed in the episodes because of those delightful people. And actually, they were the most realistically costumed and styled people. Once in a while, Avis would wear something that was a little flashy for daytime. Yeah. But you know what? She's the wife of
fantasy.
Yeah, fantasy, and the head of his, you know, the wife of the studio lead. So what are you gonna do? So I know we've kind of bashed a bit on this show. That is not to say it is a bad show by any means.
No, it is actually, it's an entertaining show.
It's shot beautifully.
Yeah, it's got great, you know, got sets.
Yeah, it's got great location. Cars are really pretty.
If you're a car person, that's beautiful cars.
Oh, yes.
Beautiful cars.
And the costuming, besides per Claire, in my opinion, it's pretty decent. Yeah. It's just, we were expecting a little bit more from the show, but like I said, it's not to say it's a bad show. It is a fun, main word, fantasy. Yeah. And if you want that little bit of a taste of old Hollywood, this is a great starting point to go on to other films about Hollywood. So after watching Hollywood, pop in Sunset Boulevard. Go watch LA Confidential. Have this be a springboard into the Hollywood genre for you if you're new to it, I would say. And I mean, we watched it. The first 3 episodes we kind of honestly struggled through. Yeah. Number 4 really picked up for us, and then it kind of was enough to carry us through to the end. Yeah. And it ended, and it wasn't at a point like, oh, we hated it. Yeah. But we didn't have that emotional thrill of, oh my God, that was life-changing, let's watch it again. Yeah. And it's just, it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a second season, if they ever made a second season out of this, maybe I'll watch it.
But I wouldn't be, like, waiting, you know, looking up the dates, like, when it's going to be coming out. Because we've done that with other shows. Yeah. That really gripped us, and even if their time period, the other shows we watch are different time periods, so it's like, we like the time periods that they have us enough that we are looking for when are those being released. Yeah. Which now we know.
So, I mean, this would have been maybe better as a entire series. Yes. So we were able to develop the characters. Yeah, seasons, and develop the characters and the conflicts. So this just felt very rushed. And, you know, I mean, the fantasy part's okay for me, but I just wish there was more conflict.
And more stuff to chew on.
More stuff to chew on. And so it just didn't have that for me. And so, as I say, it's pretty to look at. It does have interesting. It's shiny. It's shiny. It's eye candy. And it's got good characters for the most part. Yes. You know, but just not enough conflict. It's
like we were describing it as like oily Hollywood, not gritty Hollywood.
Not gritty, not the seedy underbelly of Hollywood.
Like oily, like kind of like glossed over.
Yeah. Like it's slick looking.
Yes.
But oily where all the
too slick.
A little too slick, and yeah.
There's nobody really ugly.
It didn't have the grittiness that I wanted in a Hollywood story.
Well, especially because we were raised, you know, like LA Confidential, Sunset Boulevard, these stories that make you go, ooh, you know, like maybe Hollywood's not the dream that I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And this just didn't quite do that.
But I mean, granted, Dreamland
would have been a much better title.
Yes. We give Netflix's Hollywood 3 milkshakes out of 5.
If you like our content, like and subscribe and follow us on Facebook.
Honey, it's just a fantasy, I swear. I don't really want to go to Dreamland like what they meant. I just meant I just want to go to Hollywood, okay? I don't mean I don't mean that I want to sleep with other people, okay? I just wanted to go see